it's Alice, and today we are gonna talk about one of my favorite subgenres of the mystery genre, I guess, which is like locked room, closed circle mystery. To be honest, I've been calling all of these types of books just locked room mysteries, and I didn't realize until recently that there's something called a closed circle mystery. And I feel like I just thought it was all under the same umbrella, but I guess it's kind of like different things. But I feel like there's a lot of overlap, which is why I'm bunching them together. Now, if you don't know, a locked room mystery is a mystery that happens in a locked room. It's sort of in the name, so it's a seemingly impossible crime. And then a closed circle mystery is the kind of mystery where you only have a certain amount of people that could have done it. So maybe they're like stuck in a place or whatever. I love both of these things. Like, it's one of my favorite, it is probably my favorite like subgenre within mysteries. So today I want to share with you some of my favorites that I've read, and then I also have a TBR at the end that I want to show you. Now, I noticed when picking these out that a lot of the books that I have to show you are by the same authors. I think that's just because when I find an author that writes mysteries that I like, I tend to try and read more of their books. And I guess, you know, locked rooms and closed circle mysteries are pretty popular. Like, a lot of authors write them, I guess. And I feel like when I find an author that does it, they generally like do it in several of their books, but I really like it. But yeah, I have a lot to show you, so we should just get into it. We're gonna start with the Queen of Mystery herself because she deserves it. I have two books that I want to show you by Agatha Christie, and the first one is probably my favorite mystery novel that I've ever read. It's And Then There Were None. This is about 10 strangers who are summoned to this private island by an eccentric billionaire, and they all decide to go, and they meet each other, and they seemingly have nothing in common on the surface, but deep down they all are carrying these dark secrets from their past, and they've all done horrible things or bad things in their past, and someone knows about all of it and has decided to punish them for it. So they end up getting stuck on this island, and someone has decided to kill them off one by one until, well, it's in the title. This is such an atmospheric read, and I love how the further you get into this book, the darker it feels, and things really get wild in here. I feel like this is such a clever mystery, and it's so clever that like it's one of those books that you could easily reread even though you know what happens, because it's just so freaking good. Like, it is amazing, and I think everyone should read it, and I highly, highly recommend it. I, of course, also have to mention this one. This is Murder on the Orient Express, and this is set on this luxurious train that is traveling through the mountains in winter, and they get stuck in this snow drift, and they have to stop the train, and they have to spend a night just stuck up in the mountains. And during that night, this American tycoon is killed in his compartment, his door having been locked from the inside. This is a Poirot mystery, and he's one of my favorite detectives. I just love that weird little Belgian man. And obviously, you know, these people are stuck up there. It can only have been a certain amount of people, and he wants to find out who on the train is a murderer. Again, this is really clever. It has quite a fun twist at the end, and it's just such a good book. It's also perfect for winter, and it's like super atmospheric because they're stuck up in this snowy mountain. I could mention a lot more of Christie's books because she wrote quite a lot of these types of mysteries, but I just wanted to highlight these two because these are my favorites. But if you've read these and you want more, there is much more to be found in her catalog that are like a part of the same subgenre. Secondly, I have two books by Stuart Turton. The first one being The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And this is a roller coaster of a book. Like, this will take you for a ride. It's super atmospheric, and the setup is just beyond. The story is about a man who is stuck in a time loop at this like mansion, and he keeps reliving the same day. And at the end of the day, a woman named Evelyn Hardcastle is murdered. And he's told at the beginning of the book that he's gonna get 8 days to try and figure out who kills Evelyn Hardcastle at the end of the day that he keeps reliving. And every day he wakes up in a different body of the other people who are in this mansion. So every day he wakes up, and he wakes up in a different person's or suspect's body. It's such an insane setup, and I will say this book can be a little bit confusing once you start reading it because it just throws you straight into the story. And there's a lot going on and there's a lot to figure out, so it might take you a little bit of time to get into it. But once you do, it will take you for a wild ride, and there is so much going on and much more than I'm saying, and it's like a whole thing, but it's so good. It's really intricate, it's exciting, and I just think it's really, really clever. I also really do love the setting. Like, it's set at this mansion surrounded by these woods and everything is really foggy all the time, and it's excellent. The second one that I have by Turton is The Devil in the Dark Water, which is historical fiction, and it's set in 1634, and one of the world's greatest detectives is being transported by ship back to Amsterdam as a prisoner, and he has been accused of a crime he may or may not have committed, and with him is his loyal bodyguard who really believes in his innocence. And they go on this ship, and the minute the ship leaves the bay, weird things start happening, and there's like weird symbols, and there might be a demon on board, and people start dying. This is a great mix of historical fiction, mystery, and adventure, and all of these occult elements in this book make it a little bit creepy and a little bit spooky, and again, there's a lot going on in here, and I really, really enjoyed this. It is a little bit of a longer one. It is maybe a tad too long, but I still feel like it's worth the read because it's a story you can get really immersed in, and there's a lot happening in it and a lot of interesting elements. And even though it took me a little bit of time to get through this, it is a book that it has kind of stuck with me a little bit. Like, I remember quite a lot from this book, and usually I forget most of the books that I read, but this has a vibe to it that I was just really, really into. Moving on, of course, I have to mention the author Ruth Ware, who I've read several books by, and she's kind of like a hit or miss author for me. I know that that's a lot of people's experience with her as a writer, but there's something about like her books, I can't stop reading them because I feel like even though I don't end up loving her books all the time, I always do enjoy them. My favorite one that I've read by her so far though is The Turn of the Key, which is set in this smart home, which is a really interesting setting. And we're following this nanny who has been accused of causing the death of one of the children in her care, and she's basically writing letters to this lawyer trying to get him to help her, and she's just basically going through what happened. I remember I really liked the setting of this, not just the smart home, but also the fact that this home is in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. Like, that adds a lot of atmosphere to this. It's a book about secrets, not just secrets of the place that they're at, but also people's secrets. And I just remember the atmosphere of this was amazing, and it was so compelling. Like, I couldn't stop reading it, and I read the whole book in a day, and it has like a creepiness to it that I just really, really like. Another book by Ware that I quite liked as well was The Woman in Cabin 10, which follows a travel journalist who is sent on assignment on this luxury cruise, and everything is well and fine until one night she believes that she sees a woman being thrown overboard, but then when she raises the alarm, no one believes her. Again, this has a cool setting. It very much has this closed circle thing going on in it, and I remember mostly the plot of this. I don't remember the characters that well, but I feel like it is a plot-driven book, so it's fine. And I just found it really compelling. It has a really creepy sort of vibe to it. There's something about like ships that I find really creepy, and yeah, it was very entertaining, and sometimes that's all you really want out of a book. And again, with Ruth Ware's books, I always do end up finding them enjoyable on some level. I kind of feel the same about this next author actually, Riley Sager, who I've read a couple of books by and really enjoyed, and again, there's something about the premise of this author's books that just pulls me in. The first one is The Last Time I Lied, which is about a woman who 15 years ago, she was at a summer camp, and during her time there, this horrible thing happened, and then we meet her as an adult, and she's a rising star in the New York City art scene, and she decides to go back to the summer camp to find closure and the minute she gets there, she realizes something is really off. The setting of the summer camp is fantastic, and that adds a lot of atmosphere to this book. Again, this is a book where I feel like it was mostly about the plot and I didn't connect that much to the characters, but when I read it, I was really into it, and there's something really entertaining about it and compelling and a little bit creepy. The other one that I've read by this author is Lock Every Door, which is about a woman who finds this job as an apartment sitter in New York City, and she can't believe her luck because this apartment is in this infamous fancy building, and everything seems fine until she gets there and one of her fellow apartment sitters that she meets there goes missing. Again, this building is a great setting for this mystery, and it like creeps up on you how disturbing this building actually is and like the people in it, and I really liked the build-up of that suspense. It's a little spooky, it's creepy, and there's a lot of wild stuff going on in this place. Next, we have one that I love, but I feel like it's a little bit on the sillier end of the scale, or the lighter end of the scale. It's A Meditation on Murder by Robert Thorogood. This is set on a fictional island in the Caribbean, and this spiritual leader of this retreat is found murdered in a locked room, but there are other people inside of this locked room, and one of them has confessed, so it seems pretty open and shut. But then we have this very British detective who is wandering around this tropical island in his woolen suit, sweating to death because he's just really into his suits. He gets to the crime scene and he just sees that things aren't really stacking up, and he starts questioning what actually happened. This is such a fun book, slightly ridiculous, but like in the best way. And I feel like the stars of the show in this book is like the detective and the team around him. Like, they're so much fun to read about. And then the mystery is really clever. Again, a locked room mystery is always intriguing, like what actually happened. And this book is just, I feel like it's pure entertainment. Another book that is also super fun, but slightly darker, is The Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel. This is historical fiction. It's set in Edinburgh in 1888, and we follow this Scotland Yard detective who is sent from London to Edinburgh to team up with this slightly superstitious, slightly insane Scottish detective, and together they investigate the murder of this violinist who, you guessed it, was murdered in a locked room. The historical setting of this is excellent. Like, think historical, foggy, slightly rainy Edinburgh, like that's the setting. And we're following these two detectives who are such polar opposites. They're on completely different ends of the scale, but together they run around the city looking for clues. And there's like a violin in here that's maybe has like ties to the devil. There's ghosts, there's body snatching from graveyards, like there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's so much fun, and it's just like a little bit over the top, but just like the perfect amount. Second to last, before we move on to my TBR, we have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, which is maybe a little bit of a stretch to include in this actually, because I feel like this is a closed circle mystery, but the people in it, like the suspects, aren't like actually stuck in a place in the same way. So it's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm just including it anyway because I feel like it has that vibe to it. It's set at this college reunion where this woman is determined to return sort of triumphant to this reunion because she left college after this tragic thing happened with one of her best friends, and she just wants to return and show everyone that she's doing good. And the story is about her and her 6 friends, and someone has decided to like find out what happened to this one girl, and they're sure that one of the friends had something to do with it. So the book is all about figuring out who in this group did it. The last one that I have, I'm mentioning because it's a little bit of a different twist on the closed circle thing because it's a dystopian novel. It's The Last by Hanna Jameson, which is set in Switzerland, and these people are at this hotel when nuclear war breaks out, and It's basically the apocalypse, and they're stuck at this hotel, and our main character, who we're following, he becomes obsessed with trying to find out what happened to this girl that they find dead in the hotel's water tank. This isn't the perfect book, but it's very readable, and I feel like the setting is really cool. We have a group of all of these different people who are thrown together and they're stuck together, and learning about them was really interesting. And I just think this is it's a fun twist on the closed circle mystery, because we also have the end of the world. Alright, those are all the books that I've read that I wanted to mention. I feel like I'm missing some. Like, I feel like there are a couple of obvious ones that I just forgot to include, but I don't know. I can't think of them right now, so they're not here, but we're just gonna have to move on. I have a TBR that I want to show you, and yeah, I have quite a lot of these books on my shelves waiting for me because I really like these kinds of mystery novels. First, we have a book by Lucy Foley that I've wanted to try for a while. It's The Hunting Party, and this is about a group of old college friends from Oxford who gather together at this cabin in the mountains in the winter, and I think they do it every year. It's like a tradition, and they get snowed in, so they get stuck there, and then someone is murdered. And obviously, one of the people in the cabin must have done it. I love a good wintry setting like this, so that's intriguing, and I've heard really good things about this author, so I really want to try something by her. The second one that I have is one that I feel like I've mentioned a million times that I want to read, especially recently. It's The Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, and this follows a university murder club who decide to go to this island, which is the scene of this grisly unsolved murder, and once they get there, someone decides to kill them off, one by one. And it just sounds really good. I've had this for a while. I keep saying I want to read it, and I just need to actually do it. Then I have a book that I just got. It's The Fury by Michaelides, which is about this reclusive ex-movie star who goes, I think, on an annual trip to Greece with her friends. And in this book, they go on this trip, and I think they get stuck on the island, and then of course someone dies. The setting of this sounds really, really good. It sounds kind of like summery, so maybe I'll read this in summer. And I really like this author. There's something about like the way he writes that I'm really into. Next, we have got The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentill, which is set at the Boston Public Library on just a normal day. And everything is normal until this woman's scream pierces the silence as she's being murdered, I assume. The security people of the library contain everyone in the library really quickly so no one gets out, and then the police come and are trying to figure out what happened. I think we follow 4 people who end up like sitting down at the same table together, and I guess they chat to each other, and I think one of them is the murderer, which is a very interesting setup. Second to last, we have one of my unread Ruth Ware books. It's The Death of Mrs. Westaway, which is about this woman who gets a letter that she has come into an inheritance, but she quickly realizes that the letter isn't actually meant for her. But I think she's kind of like a con artist, so she decides she's gonna go to this place to like see if she maybe can get something out of this, and she gets stuck in this mansion with a bunch of strangers, and I think someone dies, and obviously something weird is going on. The last one I have is another one that I just got. It's Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This is actually a fantasy novel, which I think is really cool. It's about these 12 heirs who gather on a ship to go on like a sacred voyage, and I think the trip lasts for 12 days or something. So they're stuck on this ship, and then one of the heirs is murdered. Obviously this is one of those closed circle type things, and I just think that in combination with this being a fantasy novel and the people on the ship having magical abilities, I just think that sounds amazing. Okay everyone, that was a lot of books, but we made it through all of them. Now obviously I really like these kinds of books, so if any of you have any books like these that you want to share in the comments, I would love to hear about it. Whether it's your favorites, some books you're excited to read that are like this, or just recommendations, I would love to hear it. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!